On this midweek limbo holiday week edition of Club 904, we have friend of the program, Dan Griffiths. Yes, we are opening the data bank because it's the most wonderful time of the year. Your Jacksonville Jaguars headed to the playoffs. Will they host a home playoff game as the division champion? That part remains to be seen. We'll dive into the numbers from the Jaguars' 6-point victory over the Indianapolis Colts. Yes, I know I butchered the title on Sunday night. Sue me. My apologies. After that, we'll dive into some of the other storylines coming out of this one. Leadership philosophy and curriculum theory development. Those who know it is my guilty pleasure. We're going to get into a little bit of that, as well as what the Jaguars can expect from the Tennessee Titans in their Week 18 matchup. Let's get after it on this Tuesday edition of Club 904. What is going on, party people? Happy holidays. Happy almost 2026. Mia O'Brien, excited to be with you for the next hour here on the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 network. And of course, as always, we encourage you to not only like and subscribe to our friends at the Action Sports Jacks various channels and platforms. You can follow them on Instagram and TikTok, where Noah Schlicksup and the crew are doing yeoman's work, combing through all of the best sound bites from the locker room regarding your Jacksonville Jaguars and much, much more. And of course, you can also subscribe here on YouTube, which is where each of our broadcasts in Club 904 come at you live on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. No Thursday show this week, so you just get me on Tuesday. And my friend who is going to join us in the club, but as I realize, as we record this podcast a day early, because we've got some other things going on in the Action News Jacks, Action Sports Jacks universe on Tuesday, so this is being recorded ahead of time, I realize I forgot to upload to the studio, the virtual studio that produces this program. I forgot to upload something very, very special. Here it is, folks. Let's go. Wait for it. I didn't realize it would take this long to upload, so this is a little anticlimactic. Dan Griffiths was told he's getting a surprise today. I forgot to tell him he's actually getting 2 surprises so long as this video decides to load in proper time and space. Hey, listen, this is the beauty of live podcasting and live television, folks. Okay, here we go. If that doesn't get your juices flowing on a Monday afternoon, I'm not sure what will. Dan Griffiths of Action Sports Jacks hanging out with us here on this taped early, but still with the beauty of live television production element to it of Club 904. Happy holidays, Dan. Merry Christmas. How you doing?
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you. That was unexpected. Thank you very much.
Hey, I told you there'd be a surprise. There's another surprise still waiting, although maybe you've already been informed about it. But hey, listen, that's the beauty of the holiday season. You never know what you're going to get, or maybe that's Forrest Gump. Point being, let's just keep it moving, and let's start big picture here, Dan. The Jaguars win their 7th straight. They have now won 7 straight games, which is their second longest win streak in franchise history, trailing only an 11-game win streak in 1999 when they finished 14-2. They are 12-4 for just the second time this millennium. Your thoughts on the Big Cats' impressive victory, or maybe not so impressive, up in Indianapolis?
Yeah, it could have been certainly a lot more impressive than it ended up being, if not for the 2 turnovers in the red zone, and not to mention 2 really good kickoff returns by the Colts that put them in really advantageous positions. So there's a world, if you don't look at the turnovers and you just look at the raw numbers, it's probably a little less. It's probably a little closer than it probably should have been, but nonetheless, those are the kind of games, really, really tough games that the Jaguars have to win. They know that those division games are really never going to be easy outside of the Colts game earlier and the Titans game earlier this year. But, those are certainly games that you expect to be difficult. And the Jaguars, whether it's hard or easy, have found ways to win in the last 2 months.
So we have a 16-game sample size to dive into the data bank, evaluate and crunch those numbers from, with 1 regular season game remaining. We're going to start on the defensive side of the ball, coming out off of this 23-17 win over the Indianapolis Colts. And of course, all of Dan's work is available at actionnewsjacks.com. But as I mentioned, let's begin with those defensive backs. No wide receivers. We'll get to you here in just a second. Dan put this lovely graphic together. We need to show it to the world here on Club 904. For you, two standouts on the defensive side of the ball in this game and over the last 4 weeks. Monteric, Buster Brown, and Jarian Jones. Elaborate for us.
Yeah, so initially I was just looking at Jarian Jones's numbers and I was like, dang, he's played really, really well in the slot. He's been asked to do a lot more than we probably initially thought with injuries to Jordan Lewis across the season. And now he's out for the remainder of the season. There's only one game left, but you're looking into the playoffs too if you're a Jaguars fan. And Jarian Jones has stepped up in a big, big way. He kind of got a um, tough set in the beginning parts of the season, having to play more outside, kind of struggled. But since he's go back to the slot, it's him and Cooper DeJean 1-2 for almost every statistic in the slot. And Cooper DeJean, if you know anything about the Eagles and Cooper DeJean, that's the high praise.
Go Hawks, baby.
So he's in, especially in the last 4 weeks, him and Monteric have played stupid well. Monteric's giving up 9 yards a game. Against the Colts this past weekend, I just saw the numbers. He was targeted 8 times, gave up 2 catches for 11 yards.
And probably should have had like 3 interceptions, as we joked on the post-game edition of this program. Look, I was astounded by the stat. The Jaguars have set a new franchise record, and they're second in the league in passes defended. Dan, there's been so much made about Anthony Campanelli and how they punch the ball out, but that's why I'm glad we're spotlighting the secondary, because it's not just about the physical tackling and trying to punch the ball out and create takeaways. It's also about what they're able to do in the air, especially Buster Brown, who really has emerged as, dare I say, CB1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, they're getting, and even you talk about the third safety, Antonio Johnson, who now has 4 interceptions and is second on the team. It's a lot of guys who early on in the season maybe you didn't expect much from, who've really turned it up. Jaguar fans probably assumed that Greg Newsome was going to take Tyson Campbell's role, and it's like, no, Monteric Brown is your cornerback 1 right now on the outside. 14.6 NFL rating. For those unfamiliar, if you spike the ball every play, it's a 39.7. So it's on a scale of 0 to 158.3. He is better than spiking the ball for the Jaguars defense. 1 interception. Jarian Jones has back-to-back weeks with interceptions. So between those 2 guys, it's really tough for opposing offenses to figure out where to throw the ball. And it's not like there's too many holes at linebacker. You got Devin Lloyd's got 5 interceptions this year. Antonio Johnson's got 4. It's really tough right now, and kudos to the Jaguars secondary for really stepping up. Whether it's Monteric, Jarian Jones, Antonio Johnson, and Greg Newsome's played a lot better in the last few weeks as well.
Yeah, and of course, he was banged up. People forget, especially in that Arizona game, to the point that they pulled him off the field on defense because they're like, you can't really contribute with the injury. And he was like, I'll just run around on special teams. I've never played special teams before, but like, I'll be a gunner. Just tell me where to go and I'll run and I'll do what you ask me to do, which is the beauty, the secret sauce behind the Jaguars' 12-4 record. Dan, I think I know the answer to this, but since we brought up Greg Newsome as well, who is also a pending free agent like Buster Brown, I would guess, and again, we don't want to look to 2026 unless we're talking about January 4th, 2026, which is when the Jaguars will host the Titans at 1 p.m. And you want to be there. Make sure you get your tickets. And especially if they win, we're not going to look ahead to the playoffs in the wild card round. But if the Jaguars are fortunate enough to have a home playoff game, please buy those tickets. I can't stand to see more Bills fans in the stands if it is the Buffalo Bills. Point being, Dan, we are going to look ahead to 2026, though, with regards to this conversation. What we have seen at the time of the calendar year in the football calendar, when you are supposed to be peaking at the right time. Priority for you to re-sign this offseason, to fortify that cornerback room, knowing that just Jarian Jones and Jordan Lewis, the only 2 corners under contract as of right now for the Jaguars, because Christian Braswell, because Trent Baalke drafted him and then has decided to waive him 1 year and he was on the practice squad. Technically, he's a restricted free agent. I would assume he is brought back unless a team is able to come up with a qualifying offer, which I don't see happening. And so I would think that he would be the 3rd cornerback back. How else are you fleshing out that room moving forward?
If you're asking me the priority between Monteric Brown and Greg Newsome, I'll say Brown. I think it's not even just the last 4 weeks. He's played well the entire season. Mm-hmm. And it's that consistency that Greg Newsome hasn't showed, whether it's been in Jacksonville or in Cleveland. that I think you got to reward Brown for what he's done this season. And he's a guy that's really stuck to his role, played his role over his career in Jacksonville, and I think that it'd be awesome not only for him and the Jaguars defense, but also to show that you're a, a franchise that'll go reward a player like that who's stuck around and is playing the best ball of his career at the right time.
And as Liam told us when Jacoby Myers was extended, the Jaguars want to reward people, not just players. And I think that, to your point, it would go a long way to reward someone who began his career as a seventh round pick, just trying to make a 53-man roster. Since you brought up the safety play, I am curious your thoughts with Eric Murray back in the fold, Dewey Wingard, of course, back from the concussion protocol, Antonio Johnson seeing significant snaps, perhaps in the slot with no Jordan Lewis down the stretch. How do you balance that combination here in the short term before we talk long term?
Yeah, the Jaguars to start the year really like to play big dime looks with third safety. It started out Darnell Savage, and then they traded him pretty early on in the season, and Antonio Johnson came in, and he's done really well. Um, I'd like to see Dewey's had flashes this season, but he's given up. He's probably the weakest link right now in the Jaguars starting secondary, especially at safety. Eric Murray came back and played pretty well, I thought yesterday, or yeah, yesterday as of recording this. But I right now I want to see as many snaps as I can of Antonio Johnson, who just continues to make plays for the Jaguars.
Which brings us to this, Dan, since I failed to ask it when we were discussing the future of the defensive back room or the cornerback room more specifically. Jarian Jones been very vocal about cross training at all 5 positions in the secondary. Christian Braswell has also told me that they have cross trained him at safety as well, which is not a surprise when you consider the Jaguars' strength in numbers, especially on the offensive side of the ball with that offensive line where all 5 guys can seemingly play all 5 positions at any given moment. And the same can be said for how they are preparing on the back end defensively. Travis Hunter comes back next year. Dewey Wingard, potentially a cap casualty, I believe his contract. Let me do the math here. So it was a 3-year contract. It was signed after the 2022 season. So 3, 4, 5. Okay. So Dewey is a free agent as well. You tell me, with what we just said about Buster Brown being the priority over Greg Newsome, looking ahead to where that safety room will develop with Caleb Bransaw returning from a essentially redshirt year on the shelf on the reserve injured list after his foot injury in training camp. Where does this Jaguars defense go from here once you bring those 2 young players into the fold? And so you're obviously trying to win in the here and now, but you're also keeping that eye on the future.
Yeah, it's I was going to bring up Ransaw if you didn't, because I can't remember.
What do you think his strength? Like, I mean, that's the whole thing with Antonio. Because to your point, in the here and now, I too want to see a lot of Antonio. But with no Jordan Lewis, I think him playing at that big nickel is huge. If he's that third safety who's a box safety, because I don't think he's a true center fielder. I don't know what Caleb Ransaw is. I can tell you this: Rayon Lane looked fine as a center
Yeah,
fielder.
he's played well
As a true free safety. And he told me that at Navy, he played both. So, like, that's where, in terms of how you win in the here and now, but also keep an eye towards we need to continue to develop players on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. I was curious your thoughts on those 2 rooms and how they work in perfect harmony.
Yeah, I think the Jaguars are in a situation where they kind of have. You talked about the perfect harmony of veterans and some young guys that you have the potential to really develop. Whether it's Jarian Jones is only in his 2nd year, Travis Hunter, Caleb Ransaw, Raywan Lane, who's played really well both on defensive side when he saw snaps and on special teams. He made another fantastic special teams tackle this past weekend against the Colts. So that's if you want to look to let go of a Dewey Wingard, you can probably make do. You have 2 veteran safeties with Antonio Johnson and Eric Murray, and then you have Raywan Lane and Caleb Ransaw, and maybe if you want to throw in the versatility of a guy like Jarian Jones, you can do that. It's going to
Because
be
then
tough.
because that's where, like, you let off on the graphic portion of this segment. You mentioned about Jarian Jones maybe getting the short end of the stick or maybe not the best hand dealt to him when his second career start outside is against T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And while maybe he wasn't man marking both of those players the entire game in Cincinnati, obviously he ends up, not with the result that perhaps he would have liked. And in turn, Buster Brown gets healthy and he all but wins that job outside. Jarian's success, those numbers, let's bring them up once more, Dan. These numbers have come with him predominantly playing in the slot, although he did play outside when Jordan Lewis first returned from his first injury. Like, he did play outside. And so that's where I think there's a question of Jordan Lewis will be back next year. So he will be playing in the slot. Jarian Jones is kind of this do-it-all guy for you. But that is dependent on, number one, if you're bringing Buster Brown back, and number two, where Travis Hunter figures into all of this.
Yeah, and it does help that the Anthony Campanile and the Jaguars defense likes to run dime. I think it gives them a little more versatility with how many guys you really want on the field. But yeah, Travis Hunter looked really, really good at corner, probably better at corner than receiver. And it's he's one DPI away from being a superstar in that Bengals game. And I thought he was getting better at both positions. And it's the same conversation could be had on the offensive side of the ball as well. You got a lot of guys on that receiver room right now. So yeah, that's certainly gonna be interesting. I would run. You got 4 really good corners next year: Monteric Brown, Jarian Jones. If you bring Monteric back, Jordan Lewis and Travis Hunter, and if injuries happen again next year, it may be in a similar situation where we may be talking about Travis Hunter or Jarian Jones stepping up in another big way next season.
All right, let's keep it moving, Dan. Let's get to your other big surprise. And again, maybe he's already heard this, maybe he's already seen this, but as we flip it on over to the offensive side of the ball for your Jacksonville Jaguars, I thought no better place to start than Liam Cohen's Monday morning press conference. Let's have a listen. How about this one, folks? You can let Grant know that I do have the stat, thanks to Action Sports Jacks from Dan Griffiths. 43% of Trevor's dropbacks, he's been blitzed over the last month, and he's had a 65% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, 0 picks during that time. So let Grant know we have the stat. My question for you, because last week I asked him if he had it and he didn't. My question for you is, why do you think teams continue to blitz him even though he's had success against it?
I don't, I don't really know. I really appreciate Grant and Spence and Shane, all these guys, their attention to detail when it comes to our blitz plan and the amount of different ways that we were able to kind of beat the blitz yesterday. I thought you look at the second play of the game, that was a check to TJ on that drive, the outcut to Parker, that was a check. The run to DJ Dallas, that was a check. Those were all what we call toolbox plays, and those aren't in the play call. Like, those were not in the play call. That is Trevor using the toolbox that he has at his disposal each week based on the look that he's being presented and getting us into those plays. So that's preparation. It's, obviously those guys schematically having that plan and coming up with that plan and then giving him those looks throughout the week so that he's prepared for those looks and those moments and going out and executing it at a high level. So I was very proud of the way that Trevor handled the blitz, the way that we were prepared for the pressure. We knew they were going to junk it up more. But as a play caller, it gets hard because you're like, oh, well, we just beat the blitz 3-4 times. I'm thinking it's going to stop, but then it doesn't. And so you're like, well, all right, well, guess we're going to keep doing it. So I thought they handled it really well.
Had to make sure we gave credit where credit was due on the Monday morning Zoom call with Liam Cohen. Thank you, Dan, for digging up the stats that Grant Udinski and I last Tuesday were stumped. Why We did not have them easily at our disposal and equally as stumped because I just went back before we started recording this. We are recording this in case you're joining us a little bit late to the program. So my apologies, no live Q&A for Dan, but of course he'll be back at some point in time and we will certainly do a live Q&A with regards to these numbers and others. But I regret to inform you, Dan Griffiths, I went back and looked on PFF and Trevor Lawrence, if only in completion percentage, is still top 20, yes, but he's 20th in the National Football League when facing the blitz, which just is preposterous to me because it feels like when he sees that pressure, when he sees cover zero looks, that is when he's been as dialed in as any play, any quarterback in the National Football League over the last 5 weeks. And so I actually was disappointed with those numbers you put up. I'm not going to lie. I thought they would be better. But I do have some other inside baseball numbers that maybe can help illuminate just how good Trevor Lawrence has been when facing the blitz over the last 5 weeks in particular.
Yeah, I didn't those I pulled those from Next Gen Stats. So I don't know. They differ slightly. They're generally usually pretty close. But it's also I specifically wanted to look because he's been so good on third down, and a lot of these key plays that he made against the blitz have come on third down. And it felt like a lot of the situations where he needed to make a play against a blitz, as Liam Cohen mentioned, it was check check check, and it's not and I use that as a double entente. It's check check check, checking them off. It's first down, first down, first down, but it's also check, check, check. It's him going out there, diagnosing the defense and making a play before the play happens. And he had 2 touchdowns against the Broncos against the blitz. And it's this the stats for the year probably, like you mentioned, aren't as good. I know he struggled early on in the season, and I think that he's an infinitely. It's even hard to say he's the same person that the last 7 weeks as he was the rest of his career, and you keep waiting for it. And I'm sure all non-Jaguar fans are like, all right, when's it going to die down? When's it going to die down? And it just doesn't. And even his interception this past weekend, it wasn't like it was an awful decision. Like it's just the defender made a play more than anything. Especially when you look at where the receiver and the defender linebacker were when he threw the ball. It's like, all right, and Parker's been making stupid
Crazy
plays for him
catches
all season for him, especially as of late. So, you go let the guy make a play and ended up didn't work. But, Trevor's been so good in all of the on all of the crucial downs, third downs against the blitzes, in the red zone recently. 2 minute, one of the Fox broadcasters said that Trevor had the highest NFL rating in 2-minute drives. So that's another statistic where it's like, wow, if the Jaguars, when the Jaguars have needed Trevor Lawrence to make a play, he's made them, especially so in the last 5-7 weeks.
In case you missed that number that I threw at Liam Cohen's way, courtesy of Dan Griffiths, Trevor Lawrence has been blitzed 43% of his dropbacks over the last month. He has a 65% completion percentage against the blitz, 588 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, a 124.8 rating.
And that's not counting his rushes either.
Nope, that's not including when he scrambles. Now, what's even more interesting, I promise those inside baseball numbers, his average depth of target when he is blitzed, according to PFF, is number 2 in the National Football League, only, weirdly enough, to Marcus Mariota of the Washington Commanders. It's a 9.8. You knew I had to say it that way. It is a 9.8 yard per target average. And so that's where, to Liam's point, and to your point, Dan, the double entendre of check down, check down, check down, he's also airing it out against the blitz. He's recognizing the pressure's coming from this way. And so I'm going to turn and throw where the pressure is coming from. And I have an opportunity for a one-on-one potentially, or a wide open receiver, and not afraid to air it downfield, pushing it downfield in the fashion that we anticipated in Liam Cohen's offense, Trevor Lawrence would be able to.
Yeah, that's probably why you also see his completion percentage be a little lower than some of the other quarterbacks.
Maybe that's true too.
Yeah. And that's a lot of thing. It's the same thing with like, people who don't understand the context behind the stats, like completion percentages used to be like 72. They've gone up and up, but it's like, all right, quarterbacks are throwing shorter now than they ever have been in the last like 15, 20 years. So yeah, it's going to be inflated. But then you have a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who in the last 2 years, not at the start of this year, but he's getting back to where he was last year in average depth of target. He's throwing the ball downfield. Where it's like, yeah, Trevor Lawrence, his completion percentage is inherently going to be lower because he's pushing the ball further downfield, rather than say like a Patrick Mahomes, who used to throw down the field all the time, and now has been the shortest average depth of target in the last like 3-4 seasons. And that's a bad. That's not just. I still, it's not a slight to Pat
No,
Mahomes.
it's just the nature of the offense
Yeah,
that Brett Veach and Andy Reid had constructed around him. But to that end, part of why Trevor Lawrence has been able to push the ball downfield, you alluded to it. I just heard Pat McAfee say it on ESPN. Parker Washington, in Pat's words, needs to calm down because he is catching everything and anything outside of whatever cold is going around the Jaguars locker room. Knock on wood, he doesn't catch that too. Let's go to the numbers when it comes to the Jaguars
Thanks,
wide
Leanne.
receiver distribution over the last few weeks. We played this on Sunday's post-game show, so apologize for those of you who say, she already talked about that. I want Dan's take. Brent Martineau looked at these numbers from Yahoo Sports' Matt Harmon, courtesy of PFF, which basically Matt's point in posting it was to say that, quote, Brian Thomas Jr., borderline sacrificial X-receiver, did have a team high 15.4 air yards per target. Jacoby Myers is the primary flanker. Parker Washington has been the most productive player and continues making plays as the main slot option ever since the offense evolved to give him that role. And so Brent looked at this, Dan, on Sunday, and he got upset because he's like, why do people want to blame BTJ? You need that sacrificial X receiver. And by the way, he is still productive when the ball is thrown his way, so long as he catches it, which is, something that we can debate at a different time. But it's so important that defenses give attention and have to play the Jaguars honestly because of the presence of Brian Thomas Jr., the threat of that X receiver, whether he's sacrificial or is an integral part of the offensive operation. And so just curious your thoughts. And I saw you threw out some numbers as well when it comes to the Jaguars wide receivers in terms of target distribution. I'll read through some of these numbers as well for those of you who maybe it's a little too tiny to see. I'm curious your thoughts, Dan, on where the Jaguars continue to progress in terms of sharing those targets.
yeah. I mean, so long as they win, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. In
And
terms of I guess in terms of like the evolution of the offense. Like if
yeah,
I showed you this week 9, obviously Jacoby Myers isn't on the team and Travis Hunter's not hurt yet, but what would your reaction be?
yeah. And Brian Thomas Jr. led the team for until very, very recently in yards. Some of that due to injuries, but I mean, he also missed not an insignificant amount of time. It looks like he's still nursing an ankle injury,
Mhm.
that he may or may not have re-aggravated this past weekend. But like you said, it's not like he's not been that productive. He's just not been what teams or what Jaguars fans saw last season, and maybe that's disingenuous to him to expect that year in and year out. I also just think it's really hard with how much Trevor Lawrence likes to spread the ball around, to really be a guy that's that consistently productive, putting up 70, 80 yards a game. Before this past weekend, the Jaguars had 5 straight games with a leading different receiver. And it was tight ends, running backs, receivers. It doesn't matter. Whoever's open, Trevor Lawrence is going to find him, get him the ball, and whoever leads that day ends up leading that day. But there is certainly something to be said for the last 2 weeks. Parker Washington, 260 yards, and it's not like they didn't play good defense. Both the Colts and the Broncos are Broncos especially are really, really good. So 182 yards outside the numbers for Parker Washington. That's really, really interesting because I think the last time we talked, we were talking about how much the Jaguars were targeting the middle of the field, and now it's getting the ball to Parker Washington outside the numbers. He had 140 of his 145 yards against the Broncos came outside the numbers. But a lot of it also is his ability to make plays yards after the catch. It's not like the Jaguars are, like throwing just targeting him deep ball, deep ball, deep ball. It's a lot 130 half of his yards have come after the catch. He's made some really, really nice plays after the catch to put the Jaguars into scoring position. There's certainly something to be said there, but also feed the hot hand. If you can catch the ball and if you can get 130 yards after the catch, it's hard not to throw to you right now.
Right.
And you'll always have Jacoby Myers there over the middle, sure-handed guy. And if the Jaguars do hit on a deep ball, it's probably going to be to BTJ. They missed barely a couple of times. BTJ had that double clutch and ended up dropping the one, and then Trevor out threw him by like 2.5 yards or something on the other one. So that might be an aspect of the Jaguars offense that really comes alive in the playoffs. Teams have been putting more people in the box against them. It's kind of why you've seen the run game slow down a little bit. I'm fine with whoever leads, and heck, it could be Brenton Strange who comes alive in the playoffs.
Just win. That's all that matters. Some more inside baseball numbers. Parker Washington's 8 catches on 10 targets against the Colts. 4 of those catches on 4 of those targets for 52 receiving yards came against Kenny Moore, who is regarded by many as one of, if not the best nickel corners in the National Football League. And so obviously that's a pretty good day at the office for Parker, not so much for Kenny Moore. Parker Washington against man coverage among eligible receivers is now 9th in overall PFF grade. I know Bill Barnwell at ESPN. I know Matt Harmon and Nate Tice, they're all throwing a party because if you bought the Parker Washington stock early, you're feeling pretty good about it. But as this chart suggests, Stan, he is still 3rd in total routes run over the last 3 weeks, 92 compared to 101 routes run for Brian Thomas Jr., Jacoby Myers, 120. Obviously, he is the chain mover in this offense, even if he only had 6 catches for 39 yards against Indianapolis. This is where I think things get interesting. On targets per route run, 25% of Parker Washington's routes run result in a target, 16.8% for Brian Thomas Jr., 20% for Jacoby Myers. I honestly think we're splitting hairs, 16.5% by Brenton Strange, too, by the way. The point is, I think Trevor Lawrence is getting the ball distributed to everyone. I just think that when Parker Washington is on the field, to your point, it's hard to not throw him the ball when he seemingly catches everything. Just don't catch the cold that's going around the locker room.
So, and we were talking about whatever wins the game, right? I don't know if you saw. I tweeted earlier today how weird the Jaguars' offense has been. Trevor Lawrence leads the Jaguars. You know this, but I just wanted to put you together.
Yeah, I actually was going to say it earlier, so I'm glad you're saying it. Yes,
Trevor Lawrence leads the team in rushing touchdowns. Your quarterback leads the team in rushing touchdowns, and your running back leads the team in receiving touchdowns, which is just like it's kind of a conglomeration of the Jaguars season. It's whatever way somebody steps up, and it's really spreading the ball out. And it's Tim Patrick has a few touchdowns.
Hunter Long has
Hunter Long.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Bashal Tutin's got a ton of receiving touchdowns. It feels like it actually is only 3, but it feels like much more. Now, speaking of Bashal Tutin, who hopefully will be back, he's week to week with that finger injury, which I saw a lot of people on Twitter asking me. So since we don't have a live Q&A, whoever the person was who kept bothering me asking about what is his injury, sorry to the Hokies in Jacksonville. It is, and I wrote about this at the Mo Bryan Notebook. You guys can, of course, subscribe. Free 7-day trial ongoing. Subscriptions start at $5 per month. It's his index finger. This bone actually shifted. And so that's where he now has 2 metal screws in his finger. Obviously was at practice, was a participant, was limited throughout the week and listed as questionable before being downgraded to out and not making the trip. But point being, when he returns, the hope is the Jaguars' run game does take that step back towards what we saw in the first 8 weeks of the season. Although to your point, Dan, they are facing those heavy boxes because teams know and have to respect the threat of the Jaguars running the football. And so I bring all that up to say, let's start with the run game before we end with the offensive line grades and pressure numbers and what it means for the Jaguars in week 18. Your thoughts on the Jaguars run game, which I understand wasn't as flashy as their 195 rushing effort against the Los Angeles Chargers at the bank a few weeks ago. But at the same time, Travis Etienne, 17 carries for 76 yards as a collective 121 yards on the ground. It's a pretty solid day at the office.
Yeah, they needed it too after several weeks against the Jets again, and some of these weren't great defenses. Jets, Titans, Broncos, Colts is fine. And even the Colts, the first Colts game, Etienne had two big touchdowns. But other than that, it was kind of a slow day at the office. They were for a month. Jaguars running backs were averaging 2.5 yards per carry. And they ranked last or almost last in yards per carry, yards, EPA, success percentage. So it's really nice to see them get a little back to that this past weekend against the Colts. That's going to be something that they drastically need. You can't be as one dimensional as they were before the Colts game for the last month. Hopefully the return of Tootin can do wonders for them in the playoffs. Heck, DJ Dallas had a couple of solid runs against
Two
Colts.
really nice runs there. Yeah. And as we heard from Liam there, one of them came on a check from Trevor Lawrence to create an opportunity for the Brunswick, Georgia native.
And it's not like the running backs haven't been useful out of the backfield. They're leading the NFL in touchdowns. And Trevor Lawrence has also done a lot with his legs. It's not designed runs with running backs, but the run game still has life, and we saw that against the Colts. So that's really good to see. Hopefully they can ramp that up a little bit heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, as Marcus Ogden likes to say on the Locked On Podcast Network with me, as long as there's the threat of the run game, Dan, like that's all you need. You don't have to pour 200 rushing yards per game on an opponent like you did maybe in the 80s or 90s. At the same time, you do need that threat to exist so that you can take those deep shot opportunities to Brian Thomas Jr. when they do present themselves in one-on-one opportunities. Now, the one person who is apparently very good in run blocking, if only in gap scheme, according to PFF, is Walker Little. That's the only thing they say he's good at, by the way, when I went through all of those PFF numbers for the Jaguars offensive line. And so I'm curious your thoughts in terms of both pressures, pass blocking, run block win rate for the Jags' makeshift offensive line against Indianapolis, and what it means. We buried the lead when we were talking about the need for the Jaguars' run game to resurface here heading into the postseason. They're going to go up against a Titans defensive line that, ask anyone in the National Football League, they will tell you this is a Titans team that is going to be picking in the top 10 again this upcoming NFL draft. But that is not a bottom 5, bottom 10 defensive front. It's probably a top 5, top 10 defensive front with Big Jeff Simmons, 10 sacks on the season once more from the interior. I think he's easily the best, however you want to dice it, classify him, inside, interior defensive tackle in the National Football League. And he's playing on one of the worst teams in the National Football League. And so running the football is going to be paramount, protecting Trevor Lawrence paramount. What did we see Sunday that gives you hope in the stats and info department that the Jaguars can do that again?
Yeah, Jeffrey Simmons kind of roughed up the Robert Hainsey a little bit in the Jaguars guards in their first matchup. As bad as the game ended up being, I thought Jonah Monheim played well enough. And
Grover Stewart had a great game. So I don't want to say that that's a good warm-up because we don't know if it'll be Hainsey or Monheim, especially with Hainsey having made the trip, and he did work out pregame. So the hope is that he'd be back against the Titans. But point being, Grover Stewart's like a pretty darn good player. So if Monheim has to start, he at least got a little bit of a warm-up.
Yeah. And Jaguar fans are familiar with Arden Key, who's again solid.
He built the city, Dan. Don't bury the lead there either.
But yeah, it's Walker Little gave, I think it was 4 pressures against the Colts. That's not great at guard. If it was a tackle against, one of the better edge rushers in the NFL, that's probably a solid day at the office. Guard, not so much.
With no DeForest Buckner as well.
Yeah, Cole Van Lanen gave up 2 pressures at left tackle. That's really nice to see. He had a fine game against the Broncos, really. That's one of probably the best pass rush in the NFL. So, I think the Jaguars are probably pretty comfortable at left tackle and right tackle now with CVL and Anton as your bookends. I think Ezra Cleveland's been the Jaguars' best offensive lineman this season, at least the most consistent. The big question I think is gonna be: do we have any update on McCary?
We do not have an update outside of week to week, and was spotted in the indoor facility while the team was on the field Wednesday. And so no other update on his progression.
Yeah, him and Walker Little are probably a wash for me at right guard. I think McCary's probably played better overall, or the penalties are killer. I think he still leads.
Hey, listen, Walker Little had one yesterday, but it's better than what we were seeing, not just from McCary, but also, Chuma Edoga. I mean, I go back to that Texans game. Like, if he doesn't have the hands to the face penalty, Parker Washington's gone for 30 some odd yards. Then Cam Little kicks a 59-yard field goal, and the Texans may not be in the playoff hunt right now.
Yeah. So, right guards, I think I'm good with whoever, whether it's Walker Little or Patrick that plays at right guard. And then the big question is who's going to be at center. And I think Monheim's played really, really well this year. It's just like, all right, you're putting a rookie up against a rookie who hasn't played a whole lot of center. He played almost every position at USC, but he predominantly played left tackle at as a senior. If I'm not mistaken.
I think it was because he did play one whole season. Was at center, I believe.
Yeah, I think his last season was at left tackle.
I'll fact check that while you continue with some of the other numbers from Sunday's game.
Anyways, regardless, it's not a guy who's been like a center his entire career, and now he's being asked to play center again, and it's against probably the best defensive tackle in the NFL, like you alluded to. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons is and has been one of, if not the best in the league. It's like him and Quinnen Williams, and that's really tough to put a rookie up against that. It is nice that at least it's at center, and you can probably get some help from some guards. But it's also going to be crucial for ETN and Tootin to help out the offensive line and pass protection.
Ezra Cleveland was credited with giving up 1 sack. Cole Van Lanen gave up 1 quarterback hit. Here are the pressure numbers that Dan alluded to from PFF. Walker Little allowing 4 against the Colts. Anton Harrison, Ezra Cleveland, Cole Van Lanen, Jonah Monheim all allowed 2. Travis Etienne also credited with 1 pressure. And by the way, the snap count for Jonah Monheim during his tenure at the University of Southern California, he played 387 snaps at right guard in 2022, 1,157 snaps at right tackle in 22. He played 781 snaps at left tackle in 2023, and then 807 snaps at center in 2024. He did not allow any sacks and gave up just 16 pressures across 514 pass blocking snaps. So eventually made his way to the interior.
Yeah, I had his senior season swapped, but he's played everywhere, and it's that's a tough ask for any player, much less a rookie. But I think Monheim's played well.
Yeah.
It wasn't a significant fall off from Hainsey. It wasn't like Trevor was getting blown up the middle every play. So that's probably the most interesting thing for me to look for this coming week is who starts at center. And it could be like if Hainsey's not 100%, it may not. It may be that Monheim's the better option anyhow. So
right.
We'll see how it goes.
Because you want to get Hainsey healthy for the playoffs. Playoffs, yes, that is what we're talking about here on Club 904. Dan, I know it's another holiday week ahead of us, but what do you have cooking in the data bank as we get set to look towards Week 18 and then the AFC wildcard round?
Yeah, obviously, Trevor. There's so much to look at with Trevor Lawrence right now, as well as Parker Washington. The secondary too. I probably going to have an article coming out, maybe 2, on Montaric Brown and Jarian Jones, as well as I want to mention that Josh Hines-Allen is 5 pressures away from surpassing his 2023 total of 90, according to PFF. That would be really cool to see from him. He had a sack and 4 pressures against the Titans. So if he can break that season, the sacks aren't there. That's what everybody looks at. But that's going to be something really, really cool. He gets to do it against the Titans, who's historically done very well against at home.
I don't know. McAfee led his show on Monday by saying he had never seen a larger human in person than Josh Hines-Allen Sunday at Lucas Oil Field. I would like for Pat McAfee to meet Calais Campbell, Josh's mentor.
Or Armstead.
Or Eric Armstead. He's a pretty big dude too. I guess just the sheer everything was surprising to him, but I just said it to
He carries his weight really well too.
Well, especially this year compared to the Rick Nielsen era, Josh Hines-Allen. But we don't talk about that. We are not burdened by what has been, Dan Griffiths. We are talking about the here and now, like Liam Cohen. We are where our feet are, which is Week 18 of the Jaguars season. Appreciate you hanging out with us for an extended stay here in Club 904.
Thank you, Mia.
There he goes, Dan Griffiths. And of course, you can read all his work at actionnewsjacks.com. When we come back, a couple final thoughts before we get out of here. Some inside the numbers, inside baseball. I got a lot of that today on the Tennessee Titans, as well as a soundbite you need to hear from the head coach of the Big Cats. That's coming your way next here on Club 904.
See a pit? It ain't legit. When you hear that, you think Bono's Pit Barbecue, a staple in Northeast Florida now for 75 years. A place that feels like home with friendly service, a meeting place for friends, family, or business occasions. On the menu, the corn nuggets are a favorite in our house, but there's something for everyone. Sandwiches, platters, salads, sides, desserts, and family feasts. You see Bono's all over the place in Northeast Florida. You know, there are almost 20 locations in the Jacksonville area now, so stop on by, sit down, and dine in with Bono's. You can also take it to go. There are drive-thrus in many of the locations, and they have delivery options too. Just download the Bono's app to make things easy. I signed up for the loyalty program, and you can too, to get special offers. If Jacksonville is home, few things feel more Jacksonville than Bono's Pit Barbecue. Celebrate 75 years and many more to come. Bono's Pit Barbecue. If you don't see a pit, it ain't legit.
Choose your own adventure. It's not just a saying, but a way of life here at Cycles of Jacksonville. And whether it's 2 wheels or 4 wheels, at Cycles of Jacksonville, a great adventure awaits. With brands like Honda, Vespa, Segway, and Triumph, Cycles of Jacksonville has you covered with their inventory featuring a 60,000 square foot building. If 4 wheels is more your thing, check out the largest selection of Honda Talons in the entire county. No matter what you're looking for, Cycles of Jacksonville is going to have the selection you need, all with great financing and rebates. Plus, if you're active duty military, Cycles of Jacksonville will offer you 0% financing along with great discounts for military and first responders. And when you want to get off the road and set sail, Cycles of Jacksonville has you covered with everything you need to get on the water. So if you're ready for a great adventure, let Cycles of Jacksonville be your guide. Located off Atlantic Boulevard, or check out their website at cyclesofjacksonville.com.
Nobody but Nimnicht. Our family has purchased 6 vehicles from Nimnicht Buick GMC. The #1 Buick GMC dealer in Jacksonville has lots of inventory to choose from with their best price guarantee. Who gives you top dollar for your trade? Nobody but Nimnicht. Save up to $10,000 off select new GMC Sierras or get rates as low as 1.9%. You know, I'm a truck guy. GMC Sierra, my trim level is an SLT. This one's an Elevation. Pretty good looking color as well. So here at Nimnicht Buick GMC, you have a lot to pick from. My father-in-law, he drives this, an Enclave, so I feel like that GMC in the family. 2025 is coming around the corner, which means it's almost time to close out those 2024s this summer. You can schedule a test drive at NimnichtBuickGMC.com, and while you're there, check your trade value and customize your payment options. Nimnicht is there for you, even on Sundays. So, who has put in the most years and stands behind a better experience? The answer's simple. Nobody but Nimnicht. Your friends in the car business since 1941. GMC, we are professional grade.
Second straight Club 904 that I've blown past not 1, but 2 commercial breaks. Don't worry, Brent Martineau, Action Sports Jacks. We're going to get to our second commercial break. We'll buffer it towards the end or backload it, whatever the terminology is. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. This is a taped episode of Club 904. We had so much fun with our friend Dan Griffiths opening the data bank with our new animation and having so much fun crunching those numbers from a 23-17 victory in Indianapolis that we had to keep them for 40 minutes. And now we'll hit those commercial breaks, and we'll also hit this from the head coach of your Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll get to my important stat against the Tennessee Titans besides that matchup that Dan and I finished speaking about with the Jaguars offensive line, who's going to start at those 5 positions with Robert Hainsey and Patrick McCarry having been on the shelf this past weekend. Hainsey did make the trip to Indianapolis. What does that mean facing Jeffrey Simmons and friends? That's certainly a stat to watch. There's one more that I want to get to, but first, as your resident leadership professor and leadership nerd, I want you guys to hear from the head coach of your Jacksonville Jaguars, if you haven't already, from Monday's availability. Liam Cohen has previously spoken on his acronym FAST. That was one of the first terminology acronym terms we heard from him with regards to what the Jaguars would play like. Another has entered the lexicon, and it is well worth a listen.
That's a great point. That's something that we've stressed a lot here is playing the next play. Like that, we talk about that so often, and how good, bad, or ugly, What just happened does not matter. The most important thing is the next play. And we've talked a lot as coaches that we've got to be caddies in these games in a lot of ways, where caddy, it's like, man, next shot. It doesn't matter what just happened, right? It's a next shot mentality. Give them the next club and let them go hit the next shot with confidence. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You go back to Tin Cup and remember in that clip where he hits 7 balls in the water and he just keeps, I'm going to keep giving you the club. And that's our jobs. Our job specifically on game day is it does not matter what just occurred. Let's live in the moment. Let's stay where our feet are. Like our whole culture of cleats, commitment, love, energy, authentic, tough, smart. What that means is to be where your feet are. Cleats in the ground, be where your feet are. The next play is the most important play. And that's got to be the way that we live, living in the moment. For us as a team, it's the same reason why we haven't talked about the playoffs. We haven't talked about the division. We haven't talked about the conference. We haven't talked about the Super Bowl. We're talking about going 1-0 each week. And this week's no different. And so trying to keep that focus singular there in terms of next shot, next play, next op. That's what this is about. Tony Baselli says it all the time. This is the most important game in the history of the franchise because it's the next one.
Yeah.
That's all that really matters. It's the next one. And so winning in this league's hard. Executing in this league is hard. And so you've got to give each other and give yourself a little grace, especially in game where, you might have an awesome play. Well, great, let's feed off that. But the next play is completely its own entity, right? And anything can happen on the next play. Okay, you just screwed up. You had a missed assignment or you got beat one-on-one. Well, okay, go beat his ass the next play. Like, that's what this is. That's the opportunity that we have. That's the beauty of playing the game.
So there it is, folks. Commitment. I wrote it down with my crappy handwriting. Commitment, love, energy, authenticity, not attitude, authenticity, toughness, smart. That is cleats. That is at the core of the Jacksonville Jaguars philosophy, culturally, leadership, when it comes to Liam Cohen, Tony Baselli, James Gladstone, the triumvirate leading the Jaguars into 2026. I could do a whole episode just on the leadership part of it. Maybe we'll get to that at some point in time, but did want to share that because that was the first time I had ever heard Liam actually use that acronym as being a pillar of this program and at the core of what the Jaguars want to be about. So thank you to Liam for sharing that with us. Thank you to T-Wig for asking that question. All right. One final stat to get you ready for the Tennessee Titans because we are off on Thursday. Cam Ward is tied for first in the National Football League. Sacks allowed when blitzed with 24. Now, he is also top 3 in allowing sacks when he is not pressured, not blitzed with 31. But the point is I'm very fascinated to see what Anthony Campanelli does in dialing up his defense against the rookie quarterback who has seemingly had everything but the kitchen sink thrown at him this season between his coach being fired mid-year, the antics that have been maybe not intentionally, but then probably not should have been shared from airplanes across the country, from road trips that have been discussed in the national media. You can Google it if you need. If you're on the plane, don't say what happens on the plane. That's all I got to say on that front. Point being, Cam Ward has been through a lot. I'm interested to see how this Titans team plays, but I am also equally as interested to see, I'm not worried about the Jags. You just heard Liam Cohen, how dialed in they will be in terms of their P's and Q's, disciplined, taking this game and treating it as a playoff game. I'm not worried about that. Schematically, very interested to see what the Jaguars do against Cam Ward and friends, especially seeing the adjustments made in game that we talked about on Sunday's post game when it came to Jonathan Taylor. And Brent's big stat, in case you missed it, that Jonathan Taylor had 11 carries through the first 2 drives, and then he had 1 carry the rest of the first half for the Colts. And then he was held to just 19 yards, his fewest in a second half all season in the second half. And I think some of that is Campanelli and his defense buckling down in run defense. That's why they're number 1 in the National Football League. But I also think that part of it was Shane Steichen just not calling for Jonathan Taylor to carry the football. I don't know. He was falling for 4 yards pretty much every single time he touched the ball. So bold strategy, Cotton. But point being, camp will adjust in real time. But at the same time, I was surprised from the onset that they didn't stop the run. I am curious to see if they wait to dial up the pressure against Ward or if they come at him fast and furious right from the jump. And also for the Titans part of it, look, Jeffrey Simmons, it's been a hard year for him too. He's tweeting about it as he gets to the 10-sack plateau yet again. He's 28 years old. Usually the prime of defensive tackles' careers, 29 to 32. Be interesting to see. It sounds like he's going to stick around Tennessee. I have no idea who the coach of the Titans is going to be, but is he playing with that same attitude, dare I say, that we saw in 2023 in Derrick Henry's swan song at Nissan Stadium, what proved to be Mike Vrabel's final game against the Jacksonville Jaguars and his final game as the head coach of the Titans? Do we see that sort of energy from the Titans? Or after losing to the Saints this week, do they just kind of pack it all up and say, all right, head off into the playoffs, Jaguars? It will be interesting to see. As we alluded to, no show on Thursday, This show was recorded. Hopefully it's coming at you live on YouTube, live on Twitter, somewhere. Brent and I will make sure it happens. If not, you're getting it in your podcast feed as you do each and every episode of Club 904, as well as the Brent and Austin show on the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network. We will be back Sunday for a post-game edition of Club 904. Until then, one more commercial break, and then we'll catch you later. Have a happy New Year, everyone.
People helping people. It's at the core of what Alive Credit Union is all about, and it's been that way for over 70 years. From the start in 1954 to today, the mission remains to inspire financial wellness and give you a financially fit lifestyle. Alive Credit Union and its employees are committed to not only serving their valued members, but also our community here in Northeast Florida. I had a chance to see that commitment firsthand as Alive partnered with our Action Sports Jax 24/7 team to bring you Armada men's and women's soccer broadcasts. Inside the 18, it is a shot, and it's a goal! Chloe Chivers! And that connection to the community continues with Alive Credit Union's support of the Police Athletic League of Jacksonville. Alive Credit Union's commitment to our community also involves serving the financial needs of all first responders through the recent merger partnership with City and Police Federal Credit Union. Join the community and become a member of Alive Credit Union today. Find out the many ways you can be inspired in financial wellness at alivecu.coop.
Most of us know how to throw. But you need to know what to throw. I'm not talking about footballs, baseballs, softballs. We're talking about those items you need to recycle. Republic Services explains it easy. Recycling simplified. 1. Know what to throw. When in doubt, throw it out. 2. Empty, clean, and dry those materials. It takes an extra minute, but it makes a big difference. And 3. Don't bag it. This makes the recycling process faster and more efficient. This is a look at the Republic Services North Florida Recycling Center. You can make this process even more efficient. By utilizing those 3 steps, Republic Services can help you become a better recycler in your home. Learn more at recyclingsimplified.com.
If you look good, you feel good. And the medical professionals here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics are here to make you feel your best. I'm on camera every week, and I have a confession to make. I'm not always confident in my appearance. Can you see my dark circles? Is my makeup highlighting my fine lines instead of covering them up? I question it all. So when I found out about the wide variety of procedures here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics, I knew help was just one appointment away. Medical Director Dr. Megan Deacon Casey and her board-certified physicians have been using the latest in cutting-edge technology for the last 10 years, giving men and women their personal confidence boost. From Botox, fillers, Morpheus 8, and so much more. The hardest part was figuring out what I needed. Thankfully, the medical team walked me through what would work best for me through a free consultation. Come look and feel your best with the team here at Ponte Vedra Vein and Aesthetics. Visit them at one of their 2 locations, either over in Ponte Vedra or on the south side.